Hello, hello. So some of you may have heard the news that Yakuza will only be in 900p in 60 FPS mode on the Series S, along with PUBG only being 30 FPS 1080p on there as well. So this reminded me of a lot of claims that all three consoles haven't really met yet. Horizon 2, Morales, Valhalla, Medium, Ratchet & Clank, Watch Dogs Legion, 30 FPS. Granted, some of them have ray tracing, so I'd really like to see an RTX off or performance mode for every game on there, really. And I know they can't make it mandatory, but God, wouldn't that be nice, huh? You know, like what they said it would do when we pre-ordered the consoles. I'm actually thinking about selling mine and just buying a 6900 NiceXT instead. So with all these, you know, 30 FPS launch titles, it point to them being very tough to optimize for, contrary to the developer statements heard previously that the Series X console, you know, would be able to easily run 120, which was obviously a concern for a lot of people with given the weak GPU of the Series S. And I think that's going to make it a lot more difficult to optimize for in general. For new players who expect a clean performance out of the box, it's just a warning, but it'll probably be a few months to a couple years before they're fully optimized and we see anything close to the general claims they've been making. Certainly not the 4K 20 FPS for three-dimensional next games. I don't think it's going to happen, to be honest. I don't think it can do it. Maybe one or two, some kind of Doom title comes on, id Tech. Maybe. Doubt it still. Even Doom's not running on 4K 120 at the moment. And that's kind of highlighted by this tweet here by Aaron Greenberg, who works for Microsoft. 60 FPS will be the standard output, but the architecture allows us to support up to 120 FPS. And you know it ain't true when they say supports up to 4K 120. As in, the cable can handle the information for 4K 120 even if the console can't actually run any games to that spec. And I think it's the same for 8K support, because I don't ever see 8K gaming being on the Series X or PS5 unless there's pro versions that come out in the future, and 8K support probably only means that you'll be able to watch 8K video on it. So many fans have remained optimistic about those refresh rates, 30 FPS, pointing to high graphics settings for an overall better looking game. I gotta remind you folks, 30 FPS cap does not mean it'll be running 30 FPS during the demanding scenes in action. It means the max, the best it will perform at is 30 FPS. And it's entirely possible for it to dip below slideshow-like levels of FPS during, you know, harder scenes, more complicated scenes, especially in the games where there's a lot of environmental damage, FPS mostly, fast action, anything that you would want to have a very competitive environment in that's fast-paced. And I don't know about you, the environment literally popping in and loading as I play the game looks so much worse than lower resolution upscale to 4K through checkerboard. It's something that we've seen in Halo Infinite and Horizon 2 trailers. Like, are your SSDs not fast enough? I'm just playing. But really, why is there any popping at all? And I'm over it. I don't want the games to look like Final Fantasy 15. And, you know, great, but like you're running and everything's loading around you and it feels awful. It's a little tangent here. Here's another article that I just want to highlight. It says that they need to build a next generation console that could run games in 4K and 60 FPS with no compromises for developers. So if there's really no compromises, why are all these games 30 FPS? Obviously, some compromise was needed, especially for the ray tracing, but some of these aren't ray tracing games, and that's really causing me to question the power of these consoles, but especially the Series S, which has been put in doubt already by its 4 teraflop GPU. I know it's how you use it, but like, you ain't gonna double the power through some magic. It's not gonna happen unless they come up with some kind of machine learning DLSS. The bottom line, I think 30 FPS means there's less breathing room for your eyes to not ignore the frame rate dips that might happen. And that could also be accompanied by drop frames, screen tearing, stuttering. It might look good when you're standing still, but when you're actually and moving around, the surroundings can morph into a blurry mess. You might notice that you thought you parried or dodged, but you got hit anyways, and that's because what you're seeing is a late animation. The character that's swinging at you with a sword or something is already halfway through their animation by the time you see it, when you need to react to it, and that's what makes 30 FPS so difficult to play with. And honestly, I think it looks worse overall in some cases, at least the kind of game that I've played, including RPGs and slower titles, because even in titles like Horizon Zero Dawn, when you're trying to aim, it makes it quite annoying to aim for the small eye of a large monster while you're running away and moving at the same time, and the FPS can't keep up. It's just it takes the fun out of the game. And just having an option to up that to 60 FPS, why not? Right? It can't be that much more work. I'm not a developer, but clearly so many people have been able to implement that in PS4 Pro titles, so why not on PS5, on Xbox Series X, on the Xbox Series S? I think it's a need, it's a must-have at this point. You can't call these games competitive and have them at 30, some of them at 30 FPS or 60 even, push it as high as it can go. I've seen gameplay of Gears of War 5 multiplayer running at 120 FPS on the Series S, a game which they've probably tested quite a bit. So we know it's possible with proper optimization, but I don't think they'll reach that anytime soon, and that's really important for you to keep in mind if you're looking to buy one, and you still haven't got your hands on one yet. I wouldn't pay a premium, don't buy it from a scalper. Just expectations, blame the marketing departments of Sony and Microsoft, and they really messed up on this one, I think. And say buy a PC. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a good day, and please subscribe, and I'll keep complaining. Cheers.